Hi. I'm doing my dramatic reading for the Marrow Thieves. You can see here. And I will be reading, it doesn't say what the chapter is. I don't know why, but there's really real no need, I guess. However, it is page 130, if I'm correct. Yes, it is. And this is the way it all changed. Alright, here we go. We set up our tents in a semicircle, backing onto the woods, midway between their fire and the cliff. Mig didn't want to stay close, nor did he want to be backed up onto an impossible exit. We built our own fire and unfurled blankets. Light rain fell for about half an hour as the sun was setting, so we roped our tarps and sat together for a moment to regroup and plan watch. We'll do our hour shifts and leave at first light, starting with tree and ending with French. Got it? Yeah, again. Hey. No one was sure later who was to blame. They were caught unaware. But then, the idea of blaming someone was too horrible to imagine. It would have killed us even more, and we were already so diminished. I heard her at the same time, and I felt a body crash into the side of a tent. Full weight hard on my back while I lay, still clothed in my sleeping bag. The body gave a sound like a kitten squeezed too tight. A kind of windless yelp. The sound pushed adrenaline into my thighs and knocked sleep out of my head. I struggled under the weight, and whoever was rolled off, cursing. I heard another yelp, then a screech, and a long wail that made my teeth chatter. It was Wab. What the hell? I pushed to my knees and unzipped the tent flap. I turned once to see Slopper, eyes wide. Very wide. Blankets tucked around his face like a giant baby. I saw in his eyes the reflection of the Morse code, and my heart was pushing out. Terror. About 20 feet off, Tree and Zigawan were back to back, arms intertwined, at the end of a gun held by Travis. Migawan's was a few steps to their right, his own gun on the ground by his feet, chest heaving. I couldn't see Minerva or Rose, but Chiboy lay on the ground. His own knife pushed through his arm. Walt was still screaming. Standing in front of her tent, in her long underwear, mouth open in a round O of panic. At first, I thought she must have been screaming over Chiboy's wound. But then I followed her stare. Lincoln. Then, having picked himself up from where he'd been fallen into my tent, had lumbered over behind Travis. His hair was messy on top of his face like dozy, like a sleeping child. He was swaying a bit. I thought it was maybe drink, or whatever he had been swallowing back at the campfire. It was making him move that way. But then he turned and I saw Riri. Her throat grasped under his thick arm, legs kicking in the air. She was grabbing his forearm with her little hands, her face bright red. Just put her down. May tried to keep calm, his voice steady. Please, just put the girl down on the ground so she can breathe. Travis licked his lips, shifting his weight between the balls of his feet. He tried keeping his eyes pinned on the twins, Mig and Wob, while he backed up. Link, he called to his partner over his shoulder. Link, grab the girl. The girl is no good to dead. For Christ's sakes, man, make sure she's still breathing. Put her down! Let me try that again. Put her down! Mig yelled now, pointing an edge of panic in his voice. Easy, Chief. Easy. Travis trained his handgun on Mig and moved forward quickly to kick the hunting rifle away from reach and just into the shadows at the edge of the woods. He then turned. Lincoln, for fuck's sake! Hey, put her down! The bigger man obliged, bending his arms so that Riri dropped suddenly to the ground. She would have fallen flat on her face if her arm were being held by that cruel angle. Instead, she kind of hung there. At least her feet were on the ground as she was coughing now. I hadn't been seen yet. Still, half in the farthest tent and with Lincoln's unobservant current state, I slowly pulled back through the flap, turning to show Slopper a finger pressed to his lips. He hadn't moved. I reached beside my bag and retrieved the rifle, all saliva dried up in my mouth. Link, we got the crew test coming in any minute now. Every head is worth a fortune. Don't damage any of them. They were traitors. Indians turning on Indians for reward. I couldn't believe it. I'd been lulled to complacency by the color of skin, and an accident made me feel at home feel real again. She's hurt. Let her go. It was Rose. She emerged from her tent and was holding Minerva back at the door. Minerva, who had seen Riri dangling from the man's meaty grasp while her arm twisted in a sick angle, was frantic to claw past into the clearing. The sight of the old woman in her kerchief with long skirts over her track pants made Lincoln laugh. He dropped Riri to clutch his belt, and that's when Travis turned his head and She-Boy made his move. He jumped from his crouched on the ground, the knife out of his arm and back in his hand. He lunged at Travis, driving the blade into the man's leg just above the knee. The older man screamed and dropped the gun in pain and shock. Mig jumped at it, smashing a fist into the howling man's chin on the way back up. Lincoln, watching the group start to rally, picked up Riri and threw over his shoulder. I didn't see a weapon on him, but just the sheer size of him matched with his unnatural state made him a danger to us all, especially for Riri. He turned and started to run. Stop! Mig yelled, or I'll shoot! But he wouldn't. The clearing was dark, and Riri was at risk. Instead, Mig gave chase, Lab at his heels, quickly catching up and passing him. Her old runner instincts returned. Rose followed. Behind her, Minerva jogged, her arms pumping at her sides, not going much faster than a walk. Her lips pushed out like a niche GPS system. While half the group took off after Riri and the Hulk, the twins had gathered up She-Boy, pulling him away from Travis, who was crumpled on the ground with a bloody mouth. Tree ran into my tent, where I sat in half in, half out. You okay, French? He peered. He peered in behind me at Slopper. Slopper? He gave the boy a thumbs up in sign. Slopper just stared in return. We got to hide this guy up quick, Tree. Ziguan came behind his brother. I watched them tie Travis's hands to his ankles with a piece of rope before slinging my rifle on my back. Then I ran off to the dark after my family. I ran hard, with abandon into the narrow swatch of the clearing. Darker here with the closer trees. I ran full out, almost tripping over the huddled shape of Minerva where she sat, crouched on the ground, rocking back and forth and muttering words I couldn't pick up. I managed to avoid her, but slammed my shoulder hard, right into a protruding birch branch. I heard a dry snap, and I wasn't sure if it had come from the branch or the explosion of heat in my arm from further up the path. It didn't matter. I just had to keep going. Up ahead I could see shadows and then figures as the trees opened and the moon poured into the clearing before the cliff. I slowed, down onto asses, like Mig had taught me to do. One of the figures was on the ground, laying there, The other was bent over, hands on knees. The third was holding onto a tree, leaning over the edge, and that was it. There was only 3. I doubled my speed and burst into the moonlight. I was on the ground. She looked like she was sleeping, but her eyes were wide open. Rose was bent over, throwing up between her feet, hysterical between the wretches. It was Meg who leaned over the edge. I grabbed him first, taking his forearm in my grip. It's a good thing, too, because his hand let go seconds later, too shaky to hold on. I pulled him back hard, and he fell on top of my legs on the grass. Where did they go? Did we lose them? I refused to put the pieces together. Meg, move. Get up. I struggled under his dead weight. Meg, come on. We're driving him to much of a head start. I'll go into the bush edge on the west. You take the east side. He wasn't moving. I got angry. I pushed him, kicking him in the back of the dislodged my other foot under him still. He was motionless. Come on, you guys. I was yelling now, pacing a small half circle around the Cantona group. Let's go. Do I need to do this alone? I waited 2 seconds for an answer. Fine, I'm going. I was between Meg and the cliff, on my way into the trees, and I mimicked Chiboy stealthily on, like that meant anything. And then I saw it, a single pink boot, all shiny like candy. One of the fastest boots in the world, real Ninshin. And it was empty, and on its side, at the edge of the cliff. There was this feeling that has no name, because really it is such an absence that it exists only in a vacuum of feeling, and so, really, can have no name. It sucks. Looks you inside out, and places you in a space where touch and taste, and sound and sight have all turned to ash. I was there now, alone. There was no mooring, no ground, no sky. There was just me, the boot, and then, suddenly, the warm weight of the rifle on my back. My vision narrowed, and turned on a heel, throwing myself back the way I came. From 1,000 miles away I heard Miguel once call, "French, come back!" But it could have been just the wind. I passed Minerva and a broken birch bounded over the ground, legs aching, the gun bouncing softly against my spine. Later, I couldn't recall this journey back to the camp. There was no planning, no ideas or theories or even real rage locked inside my skull. There was just nothing. Nothing but a pink boot without a girl to wear it. And a rifle I knew was and a rifle that I knew as well as my own hand. I crashed into the campsite, startling the twins, who had finished up trying out Travis and were guarding him with the handgun. Slopper sat at the edge of the tent, the blanket still pulled tighter on his cheeks. "French! Jesus, you scared us!" Tree trained in the gun back at our prisoner from where he had pointed at me. He had wiped his forehead with the back of a dirty hand, leaving a streak like paint. "Where are the others?" "Did you get Riri?" Ziga won and moved closer to his brother. I must have known my face, because he grabbed the baseball cap off Tree's head and pushed it over his own, eyes still on me. "Friggin' Link. He killed her, didn't he? Damn it! I told him to lay off those pills." Travis spat blood into the grass and sighed. He struggled to his knees, hands pulled tight behind him, and looked up. Listen, boy. There's no use in us fighting now." I reached behind me and yanked on the strap, bringing the rifle to my side. I cocked the barrel and trained it on the prostrate man in front of me. Panic flashed across his face, and then it settled to a look of soft, practiced pleading. That's the only time I ever felt anger through it all, seeing that rehearsed mask slip over his dark face. "Hey now, come on. Let me go, and I can show the rest of you out of here before the white boys show up." Blood and spit flew with his words, betraying his anxiety under the mask. French, it's okay. We got him under control. Tree was trying to reason with me. Or maybe it was just the wind. I kept my eyes trained on Travis. He nodded at Tree's wisdom and then tried a weak smile at me. Yeah, come on, brother. Time is slow in that vacuum of space. In this new space, I had come to squarely between the man's eyes, and watching his muscles contort and his skin wrinkle. Then I decided against it, lowering the barrel to his chest. Always go for a sure target. Mika taught us that on my first hunts, and I listened to my elders. I dug a shoe into the comet for the kickback and it bent at the knee, just like Mick had shown me. Come on now, don't be stupid, kid. We can get out of here. Let's go. Come on, kid, I didn't mean it. It's nothing personal. I heard him whine a little at the end of his plea. But then, maybe it was just the wind. I pulled the trigger, and the wind had stopped blowing.